coffee mug a little towards me.
They're good.
A little more.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Content Marketing Takedowns. This is a new series we're trying, and basically the idea of this is kind of to go live, is to take a look at real websites with real problems, see how they're doing things. And for anyone whose own website is getting taken down in this case, don't take it personally. I understand, and everyone understands sometimes there's real business reasons that certain things are the way they are, and you want to change things, but you can't always. But hopefully this is generally useful in terms of learning how we do things at Siege and how we think best practice might help your own sites with content marketing. So our first takedown is Dick's Sporting Goods. You might have heard of Dick's. They're a well-known sporting goods brand. They have a lot of retail locations throughout the United States and big e-commerce presence, and also doing a pretty good job with content marketing. They do, for anyone who's not aware of them, they do general sports gear in general, so they cover most of the main areas of sports as we might think it, and they're overall doing pretty solid. They have a specific blog section, they call it Dick's Pro Tips. This is where most of the content marketing effort is being hosted. And in that section, you can see that it feels a little different from the main site, somewhat significantly, and I think this is actually non-optimal. I don't love that the brand name is different. I do think a lot of blogs today are trying to do something fancy and branded with their blog, and from that actually lose a lot of the shopping experience that they could gain if it was a more synchronous shopping experience with the main site. You can see in Dick's Pro Tips example, they mostly have blog categories in the section and not as clear shopping type areas. There is a shop call to action in the top right, but it's somewhat buried, and also the internal linking is relatively minimal. If we go back to the main site, you'll see that they actually have a much more robust nav. You can see from an internal linking perspective, and also for users, if they're trying to find that running shoe or that pair of cleats, having this kind of experience is more optimal for them. So my general recommendation to Dick's and their pro tip section would to be build and make their main nav same as their blog nav to basically benefit from the links that will inevitably come into this content marketing section, but also be more harmonious with the main site such that it feels similar. I don't think every single person who lands on this will know that Dick's Pro Tips is part of Dick's Sporting Goods. It's relatively pretty close. I've seen worse, but overall, generally recommend having the pure logo exist there, at least so it feels very similar in feel overall. So from there, kind of looking at specific content, I do think overall it's pretty well done. Their blog looks solid. It's not like the most beautiful blog of all time, but honestly, Dick's aesthetic is more accessible and basic, and maybe that's just kind of what they're going for as a brand overall. It doesn't make sense to feel luxury, but it looks okay. I do think the font size is relatively hard to read overall. Ideally, you'd be closer to 18 pixels, so you don't even have to work to kind of get a feel for this experience. They also do a good job of their shopping-related gear on the right side. You can see we're on a football article here, and it is general best practice to be pushing to some kind of shopping experience that's relevant to the article you're on. They do it specifically on this one. That said, I don't think in-body is actually the best preference for this experience because most people will tune out the sidebar. In a perfect world, I think in-body calls to action makes sense. Could be at the end of the article. It could be mid-article where they have a call to action to get cleats if relevant to that article. But overall, the right column is somewhat suboptimal in this way. They do have great related articles clearly tied in specifically to that football category they are in. Overall, pretty clear and well done. If you go to mobile, it's actually a much better experience, and this will go to a experience where it follows the main copy. So that is likely an experience many of their readers will actually have, and that's a positive. Backing up a little bit in terms of thinking about this section generally and content strategy, I do think one thing they do really well is just ideation and topic alignment with their buyer. So if you think about Dick's Sporting Goods, it's generally a beginner level shopping area. You go there when maybe you're a football player, you've never played football before, you want to get cleats, or maybe you want to get a new basketball. It's some basic level equipment, you're not always going to go there to get the like highest end pair of basketball shoes. It's kind of like an assortment of good stuff, but maybe not elite. So that often aligns to a beginner level person who may be starting out in sport and wants to do things for the first time, and therefore will want articles around those same concepts. So if you look at their overall content strategy, you can see it kind of aligns to that beginner level concept. We see stuff on soccer tip basics, 1v1 ball possession, drills for receivers. These are kind of things that you might search if you're new to the sport, swimming warm-up tips, volleyball defense. Most of this is kind of aimed at that younger young adult who is often trying out these things and for the first time, Googling the top level keywords in areas that make sense. And obviously there's a clear alignment where they might Google something like that and then go shop to actually buy something. Compare this to a more general football type arena, which I do think a lot of people will do with their content strategy, is they'll say, hey, we're Dick's Sporting Goods. We can be relevant for every single query under the sun for sports. That does not actually tie to a shopping experience. What they instead want to do is be the beginner level topic tie, and that's going to be a lot more significant and do better because of that overall. So content strategy, definitely like it, like their approach of going beginner with everything that they do. One thing that I have noticed in how they do things is often the title tag setup is lost on these titles. So you can see in this article in particular, it's pass blocking tips for running backs, but it's actually, they front load running back tips. There are probably, it could make sense to create a hub page for running back tips that have these subcategories, but if they're actually trying to rank for pass blocking for running backs, it makes more sense to front load pass blocking for running backs in these title tags. And also the post title. You can see they put it in the title tag as well, but in the H1, the actual main keyword of what this article is about is more backloaded for that reason. On the video side, it's similar. You can see when you look at their overall architecture there, it says pro football tips, running back tips, the pass block. You can see how this kind of is decompressing the optimization of this article, where instead they went with running back tips for pass blocking or pass blocking tips for running backs. That would overall tie in stronger to a focus that allows them to rank better on this article, on YouTube, in suggested search, all those good things that they want to do with this video and this overall strategy. So that's something I noticed generally about Dick's Sporting Goods is often their title tag optimization and their YouTube optimization is slightly off from a keyword best practice standpoint. Overall though, I think the articles are quite good. They're well done, they're scannable on average. You can see this one on how to choose a football face mask. They have some uniquely designed images that stand out and are easy to read. This makes for a pretty good experience on average. And their content quality, I think, is at a B level. It's not amazing, but it's pretty solid. And and tying to their overall brand is going to make them more successful on average. As we move on, another thing that I think is worth noting on some of their articles is they're a bit thin. So you can see in this example, how to tackle. Again, you can see it's kind of backloading the keyword and the topic overall. They front loaded that on the YouTube and on the titles and the H1. They do a better job of actually ranking for how to tackle or tackling form or things like that. But you can see here, they've only had about 3-4 paragraphs. That's not nearly enough to actually rank for something like this. They could easily build in some maybe illustrations. They could take their video, make step-by-step cells that maybe have a little bit of design on them that shows proper tackling form for someone who's trying to learn that, and that will likely allow them to rank better than they are today with this kind of structure. In addition, the URL structure is just slightly non-ideal. As you can see here, they're overall pushing the keywords and topics too far out as a theme, as we see for Dick's Pro Tips in general. In general, if you're trying to rank for how to tackle, that wouldn't be the last thing in this long of a URL. In a perfect world, I think it would make more sense for them to completely cut out sports and activities, make football the actual beginning of the slug, so there's some semantic intent that can tie in, and then get into their specific keyword focus to allow that to better rank. They don't need pro tips in there. It doesn't really add any value to the user. Overall, I think is going to impact their ability to rank on a site-wide scale. So that's a common problem that Dick's has as well and is causing them problems. So another thing I noticed on their site in particular is they have on certain quick answer type opportunities, they're not taking advantage of them. So on this chart specific query for bike sizing charts for kids, you can see they actually have an image here for this chart. This is non-optimal because it's not easy to crawl. On average, Google is trying to find things that create strong confidence and are easy to extract that, hey, this is actually a sizing chart. You'll see actual charts that are built with HTML rather than an image get pulled into the quick answer more often on almost every single query type. So this is an important element that they're not taking advantage of, and that is impacting their ability to rank. Compare that to someone like install IT direct, or install it direct rather. You can see on this example, they actually have a chart here. Looks great, but you can tell the difference. This is actually crawlable text. And this actually allows them to win the quick answer and get that result that they so want from this. So you can still rank one of your Dick's Sporting Goods, but it's gonna hurt your ability to get the quick answer, lose a lot of traffic. And I do think Google leverages this for overall rankings, not just quick answers in their setup. So as kind of a more final point on this, I do think it's just consistently okay from a content quality standpoint for Dick's Sporting Goods. You look at this example, they have a one-on-one on what the main football positions are. Again, this could be front-loaded, I think, to give more keyword focus on that. But there's not any kind of explanation of any topic other than with text. That's okay. They win because they're Dick's Sporting Goods and people actually recognize them on average more than the average person, so they can get away with being C- to B+. But if you're not Dick's Sporting Goods, you can't be C+. You have to be better than that. And I think for them, they could do even better if they get to that A+ level. So in each of these examples, they could break it down more clearly. So we actually have a better example of this. A brand that I hadn't heard of until I started researching Dick's Sporting Goods is Stack. So these aren't beautiful images by any means, but you can see they actually break down each position, where it is on the actual field, where you'll see them, and also gives more context on average than Dick's does. So that's one example of how they're not doing the most amazing thing ever, but still quite clearly outpacing Dick's from a quality standpoint, and then overall is causing some, it makes a difference in terms of one versus the other. The fact that they are Dick's likely means people will read this, they'll ingest it, they'll trust it because they trust the Dick's Sporting Goods brand overall. So in Synopsis, I would say Dick's does a pretty good job. Their content strategy is smart, content quality is pretty solid. They're clearly thinking about SEO overall. They're not leaning too hard into it, but maybe could lean a little bit harder than they are. There's room for improvement to get even further. This strategy, as we'll show in kind of a final cut here, it is doing well for them. Their content marketing is succeeding at the time of this taping, and I see it continuing to grow with this kind of effort. And it shows generally you can be a B in today's world, especially if you're a brand, and still be quite successful. But could they get to an A and grow even more aggressively? I think so. So thanks for watching the first episode of Content Marketing Takedowns. We'd love to hear your opinion on this, and give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and let me know what you thought.